Hello, everybody. Apologies for being a tad bit late with our Roswell book live reading. I actually have all of the books in front of me right now. Well, all the books that I have, not every single book, because I don't own every single book yet. And some of them I own on Kindle. But I was looking up the publishing company before we hopped down here. So these are all the books that I have. And I wanted to know what publishing company it was, so I found out. And it's Simon, Pulse, and Pocket Books, which is under Simon & Schuster Publishing. So that is something to figure out because a couple of the books, well, all of the Roswell books have been taken off for Kindle recently. So I'm going to be writing a very strongly worded letter for that. And I got my sticker. Thanks, Jess. You, Liz Parker, or whatever you do. So, hello. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to bring on Michelle. And we're going to get started with a reread. Hey. Cool.
Hi. Look, I wore lipstick for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
What can you do? Hi, everybody.
I'm working.
You're cutting out for me. I'm not sure if it's my fault.
Uh-oh. Can everyone hear and see us okay? Let me know if it's cutting out for me, for any of you guys down there.
Am I blurry or cutting out for you?
You're a little bit blurry, a little bit.
You're like super, super blurry for me, but I'm not sure.
My cell network. So let's see if that's better.
Okay.
Rachel
Is it?
said we're cutting out and in. Which one of us?
You just improved so much after you just whatever you just did.
Yeah,
because you were a complete blur to. Yeah, you were a complete blur, and now you're.
Yeah, that's.
Oh,
that's
but you're still blurry.
That's good old Cox cable for you. So blame Cox.
I'm having a little whiskey, so it could be my fault.
Jody says I'm blurry on her end, but am I blurry on your end, Michelle?
No, you are like perfect now.
Okay, well, hopefully I'm perfect on everyone else's end now, too, now that I did that.
You're always perfect. Look at those nails. Let's start with that.
Wow, yeah.
My goodness.
Thank you to my friend Wanda who did that. She actually put them on with, like, crazy glue, so I don't know how long these things are going to stay on, but we'll find out.
Forever. Forever. Nice. I know Jess is going to be a little bit late, but she'll be joining as well for our Roswell recap. And for anybody who's on here who may not have, who's on Facebook, Jess just created a book page called Roswell Watch, Read, Recap, or Relive, or something.
Read, watch, and repeat, I think it is?
Yes, read, watch, and repeat. So if you are on Facebook and you haven't joined our page yet, we hope to see you there. And kudos to Jess for hooking us up with a Roswell book page.
Yes. So I'm typing a comment for what we're supporting in the chat. So, well, we're raising awareness for it. So, you know, we always like to raise awareness for a good fundraiser. So if you want to donate to the cause, you can. If it's not a requirement, but we just like to show our support for it. I think the Bail Project is at the Bail Project on Instagram. Probably look it up.
So literally as I'm... Okay, cool. Jody Lynn says it's better now that you fixed it.
Yay! Yeah, I fixed it.
All right,
Thank you, Sprint Network.
I'm ready to
Sprint Network's
go for
me.
chapter 2 whenever you're ready for me to give it a whirl. Or
Okay,
10,
yeah.
chapter 10.
So we are doing a reread of chapters 10 and 11 because Instagram cut us off yesterday and it booted us out of the app. Well, it booted me out of the app. So just pray, guys, that it does not do that and that we're able to save these lives because Instagram did not do me any favors. And so we have to reread chapters 10 and 11 from last night. So that's what we're doing.
Okay. Here I go for chapter 10.
Okay.
It was Maria's turn to use the phone. Yeah, Mom, I know it's late. I just wanted to let you know that we ended up spending the night here at Carlsbad so we can do more hiking in the park tomorrow. Yes, Mom, we rented 2 rooms at the motel, one for the chicks and one for the guys. Uh-huh, Liz and Alex and the others are all staying over. Yes, Michael too. That's right, Mom. You've seen right through me, I confess. We're eloping, all 6 of us, over the Mexican border for a group wedding in Tijuana. I'll be sure to send you a Polaroid. Maria sighed and rolled her eyes heavenward, inviting sympathy from the rest of the teenagers in the cramped motel room. Don't worry, I'll be fine. Yeah, we're having a good time. That's stretching the truth a bit, Isabel thought. She sat at the foot of one of the room's twin queen-size beds, pressing one of her favorite CDs against her ear. Paula Cole's I Don't Want to Wait from the Dawson's Creek soundtrack album failed to drown out entirely Maria's one-sided discussion with her mother, nor did it ease Isabel's growing concern for Michael and her brother, who had been away for far too long now. She looked at the cheap plastic alarm clock sitting on the end table between the 2 beds. It was almost 1:25 in the morning. The rest of them had already contacted their respective parents hours ago, notifying them of their overnight stay at the Days Inn, but apparently Maria's mom had been working late or out on a date or something. Fortunately, none of their parental units had raised too much of a fuss over the kids' plan, knowing that you really couldn't do all the caverns in one day. If only that were the worst of our problems, Isabel thought morosely. Not for the first time, she wished she could have a normal life, with normal teenage dilemmas instead of the fraught existence she seemed doomed to live. Mentally increasing the volume of the music playing in her ear, she surveyed the scene around her, taking stock of their latest sorry situation. Although they had indeed rented 2 rooms, for propriety's sake, everyone was crowded into the girls' room for the moment, waiting in unbearable suspense for Max and Michael to get back from Slaughter Canyon. Maria sat at the head of the same bed as Isabel, dutifully placating her mom, while Liz rested in the next bed over, her back against the headboard, her knees tented beneath the frayed cotton sheets. Aside from a brief call to her folks, which she had somehow managed to garner enough composure to fake her way through, the shell-shocked brunette had barely said 5 words all evening, still locked in what Alex had labeled post-traumatic stress disorder. Unable to sleep, Liz just sat up in bed, her arms locked around her knees in a quasi-fetal position, while her haunted brown eyes watched the front door, counting the seconds until Max's return. Her face was ashen, and dark purple shadows collected beneath her eyes, making her look positively gaunt and spectral, like the crazy wife in some old Bronte novel. She needs a makeover big time, Isabel thought, but she knew that Liz's troubles ran much deeper than that. A pang of sympathy pierced Isabel's heart. If truth be told, Liz Parker was not always her favorite person, though admittedly no fault of her own. The loose-lipped, love-struck human girl had severely complicated Isabel's life by discovering the big secret and broken her brother's heart on more than one occasion. Even still, it was impossible to look at Liz now, so frail and washed out, and not feel sorry for her. Besides, Isabel kept looking at the front door too. If nothing else, she and Liz were united by their common love for Max. I don't believe this, Alex griped close by. He squatted cross-legged at the end of Liz's bed, channel surfing with the aid of a remote he had found on the table. 80-plus channels and nothing decent to watch, just infomercials and movies that were bad the first 10 times you watched them. He leaned towards the unimpressive 12-inch screen provided by the motel, his thumb relentlessly working the remote. Have you ever noticed how Earth Girls Are Easy always seems to be playing on cable somewhere? Speaking on behalf of Earth Girls everywhere, Maria quipped, finally putting down the phone. I object to that characterization, no matter what Michael may have told any of you. She yawned and looked back at her watch. Oh my gosh, they're not back yet? The blonde teenager joined Liz and Isabel in the Door Watchers Club, her glib repartee failing to conceal that she was just as scared and worried as the rest of them. What could they possibly be doing all night in a place called Slaughter Canyon? On second thought, don't answer that. Catching the somber vibe in the room, Alex felt obliged to do something. Hang on, he said, putting aside the remote and hopping off the bed. Let me take another look outside. Be careful, Alex, Isabel urged him once more, putting down her CD. Alex had no special powers to protect him if that Joe Morton character or even Lieutenant Ramirez somehow managed to trace Liz to this motel room. I'm giving Max and Michael until 2 a.m., she resolved, then I'm going after them in the Jetta. The only reason she let Alex act as the lookout here at the motel because the danger seemed minimal, and she knew that Alex needed something to do. As is, his ardent need to be of use to her and other women was, to be honest, already getting on her nerves. Never fear, he told her, stepping out of the room. A gust of warm air penetrated the air-conditioned motel room. I'll be back right away. In fact, he was gone less than 10 minutes before the door swung open and he lunged back into the room. She could tell by the look on his boyish face that he had something to tell them. She took a deep breath, bracing herself for the worst. What is it? She asked in a whisper. Alex hesitated, unsure where to begin. Well, the good news is that Morton's blue Chevy is back at the Motel 6, parked outside of his room. He tapped one foot repeatedly against the floor, full of nervous energy. The bad news is, I don't see any sign of the Jeep. What does this mean, Isabel wondered. Making a deliberate effort to curb her fears, she forced herself to think through the implication of Alex's discovery. Max and Michael wouldn't leave the park until Morton did, she speculated. So maybe they're just hanging back now, putting a little time and distance between them and Morton. You really think so? Liz asked plaintively, desperate for reassurance. Her journal rested on the bed next to her, next to a ballpoint pen. Isabel hoped that writing down her turbulent thoughts had helped Liz get some perspective on the traumatic memories and feelings eating away at her. Judging from her hollow eyes and pitiful tone, however, her private scribblings had provided Liz with little relief so far. Sure, that sounds right, Maria chimed in promptly. She uncapped a tiny brown vial and treated Liz to a therapeutic sniff of cypress oil. I'm positive they'll be back any minute. Unless something terrible has happened to them, Isabel thought silently. Worst-case scenarios rose unbeckoned from her wayward imagination. For all we know, Max and Michael might have already been buried in the desert somewhere with all those caverns and uninhibited wilderness around here. It could be years before anybody found their bodies. No, Isabel said softly, not allowing herself to succumb to such nightmarish imaginings. Max sometimes accused her of being too pessimistic, of always seeing the Tabasco bottle as half empty, but she refused to give up hope just yet. Come on, Max. Michael, where are you? Over 15 excruciating minutes later, there was still no sign of their missing friends. That's it, Isabel declared, rising from the bed and extending an open hand toward Maria. Give me the keys to the Jetta. I'm going to look for them. I'm going with you, Alex insisted, a little too hastily. He sprang to his feet and hustled to Isabel's side. His determined eyes and stubborn expression virtually dared her to leave him behind. This isn't about us, Alex, she thought, with a flash of irritation. It's about locating Max and Michael. On the other hand, she really didn't want to do this alone. Okay, she said, recognizing deep down inside she could use the company. Thanks. Taking the car keys from Maria, she paused by the door long enough to look back at the other two women. Will you be okay on your own? Sure, Maria pledged. Moving over to the other bed, she draped her arm over Liz like a mother hen, then stared up at Isabel with anxious green eyes. Find them, okay? I'll do my best, Isabel thought, uncomfortable with the thought that everyone was depending on her. Before she and Alex could embark on their possibly hopeless mission, however, a sudden knock at the door electrified everyone in the room. Could it be? Oh, thank goodness, Isabel exclaimed, rushing to the door and placing her eye against the security peephole. To her vast relief, the minuscule spyglass presented a fisheye view of both Max and Michael, apparently alive and well. Expelling a grateful sigh, she quickly undid the chain and let the returnees stagger in, sweaty and disheveled, but each, thankfully, still in one piece. Where have you been? She asked eventually, after heartfelt hugs and greetings all around. She paced back and forth between the TV and the beds, too keyed up and adrenalized to sit down, like she was still strapped into some sort of emotional roller coaster. We were so worried. While Michael helped himself to a glass of cold water from the bathroom sink, Max told them all about what had taken place in Slaughter Canyon. Twigs and tiny flecks of gravel clung to his jeans and t-shirt, which also bore large reddish-brown dirt stains. Isabel lovingly passed her hand in front of her brother, miraculously cleansing him of the most obvious evidence of his adventure, even as he continued his exhausted account of his and Michael's close call. After we finally got out of range of Morton's pistol, we left the trail and ended up hiding in the scrub overlooking the canyon. And then, unfortunately, we had to keep out of sight until Morton gave up hunting for us and drove out of the park. Just to play it safe, we decided to hide a little while longer before hiking back to the parking lot ourselves. Max sat down on the edge of Liz's bed and gratefully accepted a glass of water from Maria. We also took the long way back here off the main highway just in case Morton was waiting in ambush somewhere between the park and Carlsbad. He cast a concerned look at Liz, no doubt sensing the emotional strain written on her face. Sorry to keep you in suspense for so long. I'll say, Maria blurted, speaking for the rest of the door-watching club. They also serve who only sit around in cheap motel rooms, you know. Michael emerged from the bathroom and she patted the bed beside her, welcoming him back. Although it beats dodging bullets, I guess. Oh my God, Max, Liz moaned, the death-defying details of the two boys' perilous expedition seeking in. You could have been killed. But we weren't, Max stressed. He took Liz's hand to comfort her, but his own eyes remained darkly intent and troubled. And the worst part is, we still don't know what Morton and the lieutenant were doing there tonight, besides arguing about the price of whatever was in that briefcase. He lifted his gaze towards his sister. That's where you come in, Iz. I have a really big favor to ask. Isabel gulped, knowing already what Max wanted from her. I have a bad feeling about this, she thought.
Real quick, so the Bail Project, if you don't know what it is, it's a tool that helps prevent incarceration and combat racial and economic disparities in the bail system. So that's really important because they pay a bail, and then the bail, it says right here on the website, the bail returns to the fund at the end of a client's case, and then that bail money is used to free someone else. And this is really important for those who have been arrested, for example, at the Black Lives Matter movements. So just wanted to stress that. So I donated to I donated to this project and a bunch of other BLM projects over the last month because I was part of a fundraiser for that too. So, all right. So we're going to go on to chapter 11, and then I think the goal is to save this live as soon as we can to make sure it's saved, because now I'm paranoid about it since what happened yesterday. But everything seems to be going fine so far, so everyone, cross your fingers. All right, chapter 11. A 1-hour photo stop in White City had already processed the pictures Alex had shot while trailing Joe Morton through the caverns. Isabel stared at a slightly blurry snapshot of Morton and made a face, even from several yards away. It was clear that Liz's shooter was no Ricky Martin. Ordinarily, I wouldn't even want to get near him, she decided, wrinkling her nose at the overweight, hoodlum's slovenly appearance, let alone go inside his head. Unfortunately, that was exactly what she had to do. I really appreciate this, Isabel, Max said. For privacy's sake, they moved over to the guy's motel room, next door to the one where Liz, Maria, and Michael were waiting. Only Max and Alex had accompanied her here to watch over her while she attempted to slip into Morton's dreams, which were almost certainly bound to be sleazy and disgusting. I could hardly wait, she thought sarcastically. You know I'd do this myself if I could, Max continued, sitting across from her on the next bed over. But of all of us, you've always been the best at dreamwalking. This was not meant as manipulative flattery, merely a statement of fact. You're the only one who could find out what's in that briefcase, and whether he recognized Liz from the crash down this morning. Lucky me, she intoned bleakly. Despite her misgivings, which she thought were perfectly reasonable, she knew that Max was right. Not knowing how much Morton knew about them in the crash was arguably worse than whatever she might find poking around in the gunman's subconscious. And boy, oh boy, did she ever have plenty of experience when it came to waltzing through other people's sleeping minds. Practice makes perfect, I guess. She took another look at the 3x5 colored photo of Morton pacing in front of a large, gnarled stalagmite. His ill-shaven jowls and sagging beer belly repulsed her. The last thing she wanted to do was make an intimate connection to the man in the photo. What if he's not asleep right now? She stalled. You know how hard it is to get into someone's mind when they're still awake, especially someone I've never even met. Standing over by the window, Alex drew back the closed curtains and peered through binoculars at the motel across the street. No lights on in number 19, reported. In fact, no signs of any activity at all. It's almost 2:30 in the morning, Max reminded her gently, aware of her trepidations. He reached across the narrow gap between the beds to take her hand, while staring at her with that stoic, responsible expression he knew so well. It's probably sleep is. So much for that excuse, she sighed inwardly. Okay, then, let's get this over with. Taking a deep breath, she placed her fingertips against Morton's picture, feeling tentatively for a link to his identity. At first, she didn't feel anything, and was extremely tempted to give up right then and there. But she closed her eyes and pressed further, her own genetically engineered mind prowling like some sort of telepathic search engine through the tangled web of psychic vibrations hanging over Carlsbad vicinity like so much mental smog. Still clutching Morton's unflattering photo between her manicured fingers, she lay back on the neatly made bed, resting her head on the soft foam pillow. Alex thoughtfully dimmed the lights as she reached out with her mind, searching for the unique cerebral landscape that belonged exclusively to Joe Morton. Was it Yoda or Obi-Wan Kenobi who said that the Force connected all living things, binding them together? Either way, Isabel knew that Star Wars had it wrong. It wasn't the Dream Force that connected us, it was dreams. Dreams were the secret tapestry that linked her mind to everyone else's, even Joe Morton's. She kept his image, as depicted in the photo, locked in front of her, while her subconscious compared it against the blur of dream images and impressions that raced through her mind at the speed of thought. After only a second or two, a match was made, and bracing herself for what was to come, she followed the thread back to the slumbering mind where Morton's loathsome persona also dwelled. Oh joy, she thought caustically, the things I do for my friends. To her surprise, she found herself standing in the middle of the crashed-down cafe, back in Roswell. Boy, she thought, looking around at the tacky UFO art upon the walls, and at the cozy booths and counters where she had spent so many leisure hours, this place must have really made an impression on Morton to be still dreaming about it 2 years later. A chill gripped her heart as another, more compelling explanation occurred to her. Maybe Morton was dreaming of the crashdown because he had spotted Liz at the caverns earlier and was worrying about his crime catching up with him. That's not good, she realized. Max might be right about Morton coming after Liz again, and maybe the rest of them as well. She looked around for more clues to Morton's state of mind. Daylight shone through the large glass window at the front of the restaurant, facing Main Street, indicating that, in Morton's dream at least, it was broad daylight. Isabel spotted Maria waiting tables a few yards away, once again wearing the same short Fox Meg Ryan hairdo she had been experimenting with when she and Isabel had first gotten involved in each other's lives. She looks better now, Isabel concluded absently, now that she's let it grow out some. Scanning further, her alert gaze fell upon Max and Michael, holding a whispered conversation in a booth near the front window. Drained bottles of Tabasco sauce littered the tabletop between them, and Michael's hair still had that moused-up, spiky look that Maria had eventually convinced him to give up. Isabel wondered what Morton's unconscious mind thought they were talking about, feeling deeply disturbed that this violent stranger had remembered her friends with such uncanny detail. She suddenly felt very glad that she had not personally been present the last time Joe Morton had actually visited the crashdown. Loud, heated voices caught her attention, and she turned to see Morton himself arguing with another man in a nearby booth. Morton wore a plaid shirt and a blue cap, and his brutal features were flushed with anger, as were those of his companion, a large bearded man wearing a black leather vest over a heavy metal t-shirt. Whereas Morton looked like a trucker, the other man struck Isabel as more of a biker type. His booming voice, impossibly loud, reverberated throughout the formerly peaceful diner as he shouted fiercely at Morton. I want my money now, he thundered. An angry sweep of his brawny arm knocked both men's plates and glasses onto the floor, where they shattered noisily. Give it to me or else. Rising volcanically to his feet, the biker grabbed Morton by the collar and dragged him forcibly out of the booth. A gun, metallic and menacing, somehow appeared in Morton's free hand, the sight of the weapon hitting Isabel with the impact of a physical blow. No, she gasped, knowing what was about to happen, but unable to halt the relentless chain of events. She looked around frantically for Liz, desperate to warn her, but could not spot the small brunette waitress anywhere. She racked her memory furiously, trying to remember where Max had said Liz was when she was shot. Over by the counter, wasn't it? In front of the kitchen? Isabel struggled to orientate herself, locating the counter immediately to her left. She glanced back over her shoulder at the swinging kitchen doors, realizing with growing horror that she herself was standing exactly where Liz should have been. I don't understand, she thought, paralyzed and panicking. What's happening? The nightmare scene played out in slow motion, with Isabel unable to react any faster than the dream figures around her, her mind and body seemingly mired in molasses. Give me my money, the biker bellowed, grappling with Morton for control of the gleaming blue metallic pistol, which went off abruptly. Maria let out an endless scream as the muzzle of the pistol flared. Liz, watch out, Isabel thought. Only seconds before, an overwhelming impact struck her below the ribs. She fell backward onto the floor, searing pain, setting her nerve endings on fire, and stared at the ceiling in shock and confusion, watching as gauzy black shadows crept over her vision until just as the shadows threatened to eclipse the world entirely, her brother's face appeared above hers, staring down at her with anguished eyes. Look at me, Liz, he pleaded hoarsely. You have to look at me, Liz. Liz, doesn't he mean Is? Isabel suddenly realized her mistake. This wasn't Morton's dream at all. It was Liz's. Max's traumatized girlfriend must have finally drifted off to sleep next door and was now reliving the whole ghastly experience in her dreams. Searching for Morton's dream image, Isabel had inadvertently stumbled into Liz Parker's own recurring nightmare. Poor Liz, she thought in a moment of heartbreaking empathy and insight. No wonder she's such a wreck right now. Making a deliberate mental effort, she disengaged her own unconsciousness from Liz's troubled awareness, stepping out of Liz's crumpled dream self like a phantom, and rising up from the bloodstained floor of the illusionary crashdown. For a few heartbeats, she stood there, looking down at Liz's bleeding form and at her brother's crouching there beside the wounded girl. So this is how it all began, she reflected somberly. Funny how certain events can change your life completely, even if you weren't even there in the first place. Isabel peeked at her own stomach, making certain she had left the bullet wound behind, and considered what to do next. She wasn't done yet, she knew, turning to watch Liz's memory of Joe Morton, along with his equally panicked partner, run towards the diner's exit. Stop, she commanded mentally, freezing the entire scene in place, Morton included, while she pondered her next move. The fleeing gunman, along with all the other characters populating Liz's personal dreamscape, became as still as mannequins, frozen in position, all except for Isabel, who wandered over to the counter and helped herself to a refreshing sip of Tabasco sauce from the dream's imaginary inventory. The spicy draught tasted just like the genuine article, helping her put her borrowed memories of the shooting behind her. I have to move on, she realized, placing the fictitious bottle back on the counter. She still had to track down Morton's own dreams and insinuate herself into them. But first, before exiting this unintended detour, she felt compelled to help Liz escape, if only for the moment, from this hellish nightmare. She didn't want to wake Liz, who certainly needed the sleep, but maybe she could make her dreams a bit more pleasant. Isabel searched her memory again, trying to remember a time when she saw Liz laugh, when they had all been able to enjoy a brief respite from all the cover-ups and conspiracies. It was a depressing measure of just how stressful their lives had become that it took Isabel a moment or two to come up with a single occasion unmarred by danger, heartache, or the threat of exposure. That evening after closing, when she and Liz and Maria had all danced in the diner to their favorite CDs? No, that had ended with Max, a bloody handprint upon his chest, bursting into the crashdown to tell them that Sato had been murdered. Isabel's own surprise party? No. That had been the night Tess was kidnapped, and Isabel had been forced to battle that skin congresswoman to the death. Why do we even bother? She sighed. Finally, though, her memory threw up a fleeting interlude that she thought judiciously just might do. And it won't even take too much redecorating, she noted approvingly. Several months ago, before Tess arrived to complicate matters, when Max and Liz, and indeed Isabel and Alex, for once had nothing better to do than savor each other's company and a blessedly uneventful night out. The four of them had caught the new James Bond movie at the Cineplex, then relocated to the crashdown to debate the abundant virtues and defects of the picture. She and Max had shared a custom-made hot fudge and Tabasco sundae, which curiously did not appear anywhere on the crashdown's official menu, while Alex consumed a small mound of French fries while trying to convince them all that really, Denise Richards was perfectly believable as a nuclear physicist. In retrospect, the whole evening had been perfectly frivolous and inconsequential, which may be why, thinking back on it now, Isabel felt a heartbreaking pain of nostalgia. We were happy then, if only for an hour or two. Wiping her eyes, which had become unaccountably moist, she looked over the booth they had all occupied that night. She closed her eyes for a second, recreating the scene in her mind, and when she opened them again, dream replicas of herself, Max, and Alex were seated around a table laden with sundaes, French fries, and other delectably unhealthy snacks. Just like I remember, she thought wistfully, experiencing another pain at the sight of the carefree smile on her own double's face. I should do that more often, she reflected, barely recognizing herself. But this wasn't about her right now. Turning her back upon the reconstituted party at the booth, she helped Liz off the floor, erased her stomach wound with the pass of her hand, then escorted the dazed dreamer over to the booth, where she slid Liz in beside the dream image of Max. Here, she instructed the other girl, while placing a spoonful of ice cream sans hot sauce in her hand. I think you'll find this memory more appealing. Liz's battered psyche took refuge in the revised dream with encouraging speed. But Alex, she laughed gaily, as her waitress uniform dissolved into something more casual and attractive. You can't be serious. She couldn't even pronounce nuclear correctly. Isabel took a step backward to assess her work. The four teenagers chattered enthusiastically to one another, appearing completely oblivious to the fleeing felons who remained frozen in place at the entrance to the diner. All four kids, both human and hybrid, looked just as relaxed and stress-free as she recalled. That's better, she thought, feeling surprisingly moved by her own generosity. I better not let word of this get out, though, or it could completely ruin my reputation. Next door, a worried Maria watched vigilantly over the sleeping form of her troubled best friend. While she was glad that Liz was actually getting some sleep, it broke her heart to see that even in repose, the traumatized young woman could not escape from the ghastly nightmare lurking in her memory. Liz moaned and whimpered as she slept, grimacing in fear and pain. She tossed and turned beneath the thin cotton sheets, frequently clutching at her stomach as if newly shot. You don't have to be a creepy Czechoslovakian dreamwalker, Maria mused sadly, to know exactly what Liz is reliving right now. Her hand hovered over Liz's shoulder, uncertain whether to wake her friend from her unquiet dreams. Lord knew Liz needed sleep, but how much rest could she really be getting, suffering from such frightening nightmares? Asleep or not, Liz looked totally miserable, and Maria was on the verge of waking her, when unexpectedly, Liz stopped making those pathetic little cries in her sleep and actually seemed to relax noticeably. A peaceful expression, accompanied by the tiniest of smiles, came over the sleeping teen's previously haggard face, and her body's restless contortions subsided as she sank mercifully into a deep, seemingly undisturbed slumber. Thank goodness, Maria offered up a grateful prayer to whatever higher powers might be paying attention as she listened to the calm, measured breathing now coming from the bed. This evidence of tranquil hibernation struck her as just what the doctor ordered for her friend. Pleasant dreams, honey, she whisked Liz from the bottom of her overflowing heart. You sure deserve them. How's she doing? Michael asked, emerging from the bathroom. A quick shower had washed the dust and residue of Slaughter Canyon from the handsome alien teen and slicked down his perpetually unmanageable brown hair. Wearing a white terry cloth bathrobe, he toweled his head roughly as he checked on Maria in a dormant charge. Maria appreciated his concern. Better, she reported happily, contemplating Liz's serene smile and quiet stillness. I think she's taking a break from all this, at least for now. Good, Michael said tersely before wandering back towards the bathroom, toothbrush in hand. Despite everything else going on, Maria couldn't help wondering if Michael was still mad at her for dragging him to the caverns against his will. They barely had a chance to talk at all since Michael took off with Max to tail Joe Morton. Can't say I blame him if he was still ticked off at me, she thought guiltily, considering the way this trip is turning out.
So just to plug, Earth Girls Are Easy again. That's the movie that Alex references, and it's free on IMDb to watch if you have a free IMDb account.
Yeah. Good deal. So I think we are going to save this live, and we'll read chapters 12 and 13. So it'll probably take me around 10 minutes to just save the live, get back on here. I'm going to grab something to eat real quick in the meantime. I am starving. I had one little thing before we came on here, and I'm I need
Maybe
something.
we come back at 6 for the next one.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be if we want to do that, that'd be a good little break, and then we'll come back on at 6 your time. So 8 p.m.
Yes.
Yeah, 8 p.m. my time, and then that's 9 p.m. Jess's time. So hopefully that won't be too late for Jess. Just gonna have a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back
little break,
on,
Jess.
and we'll read more.
Awesome. Sounds good.
So, Okay, cool. See you guys in a bit.